Yeah, I had the pleasure of getting to know Jim Griffin a few years ago, and he has, been a pioneer in the music industry. And here we are a few years later, where he provides just this wonderful analysis of said industry and is always on top of anything that's happening from a wide variety of spectrums in the industry. So I was real thrilled. He's one of the first names that came to mind when we talked about these Future 15 sessions. And I'll let Jim talk about his background and everything, but it's such an honor to have him today. Jim, welcome.
Thanks for having me. You know, Gigi said, if you want to comment about my class, I think it was, or something like that. And I thought, well, that's very good because I'm here to talk about my lack of class or display my lack of class. Although I have been teaching a bit at a local college. But most of what I get comes from the fun list. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in discussing these issues further, say with me after this talk, to write me at griffin@onehouse.com and join the fun list. That's PHO for those of you who haven't had the soup, the Vietnamese beef noodle soup. For over 20 years, we've got thousands of people discussing these issues every day on a listserv and joining each other for soup on a regular basis. So there's been lots of discussion going on about these events on the fun list. But for me, for my talk, what I would talk about today, I'm sad to say it almost has nothing to do with the crisis that's going on. What I'm noting are trends that have been happening over a long period of time, an arc that brings us here. And I see recent events really as just accelerating trends that have been going on over a long period of time. So I'm not so much here to talk about the crisis or what it means or that it somehow waved a magic wand and changed the business. What's happening right now is really fundamental to what's been happening for a long period of time, which from my POV is that creativity has been moving from the edge of the network over towards its center. And this is where creativity has been arising from the edge. And never has been that has been more true than now. So this is a fundamental trend from the edge of the network to the center. Really, I call it channel we becoming channel me. It's a McLuhan-esque type expression. Marshall McLuhan having predicted a long time ago that the medium is the message, that these new mediums would arise, that we would embrace them, that we would become one big chatting family across the earth. And that's certainly happening. I mean, the funny part is that this will be remembered as the time that we all put together a home and office television studio. It's funny how everyone's got one now because they need one. And I think that's good. I think it makes all of us much more aware of what's going on in the world around us. We're participating, which again is the point. The creativity is not reserved for the center of the network. Well, when I was a kid, the power of the press was reserved for those who owned one. If you didn't own a press, you really didn't have the power of the press. And let's move that to music. If you didn't own a record company, you couldn't put music out. You had to convince somebody from a record company to put your music out. We don't live in those times anymore. We live in a time where if you want to make a video and have people all across the world view the video, you do that. And that's what's happening here now in this conference. We didn't wait for somebody to anoint this project and suggest that here was a time slot we could have, and there we go. We decided for ourselves when we would have it, and we're broadcasting from our homes. So that is a very different world than the past, where we had to get permission. We're not in that permission culture anymore. It's very, very different. And this is far better than the status quo of the music business or the media businesses. Music, I think, is just the canary in the mine for the media business more generally. Video requires more bits. Audio required less bits. What's happening now with, say, video and Zoom isn't all that different from, say, the rise of webcasting and Live 365 over the past 10, 15, 20 years. we've been watching that happen with audio. Now we're watching it happen with video. And it's, again, far better than the status quo. You know, the idea of, say, broadcasting from your home studio is decidedly better than sitting in a Motel 6 outside Oklahoma City with an industrial-sized jar of peanut butter and jelly, hoping you've got a loaf of bread, and that the guy driving the van tonight will not swerve off the road. You know, this is, in some ways, better for those who seek the limelight. And the old way of doing it was really far more filled with risk. I think this is a bit more egalitarian. And I like that idea. My good friend Peter Jenner, who was the manager of the Floyd and the Clash and so forth, he predicted about 10 or 20 years ago the rise of the middle class in the business. And I think that is what we're seeing. Although, again, these video channels from, say, Twitch or TikTok or others are very remunerative. I mean, the people who are doing it well are making $500,000, $1 million a year. So there's nothing to sneer at here. But at its most basic fundamental expression, it's not that different as regards motivation and so forth and the skills needed. You always need to draw a crowd, and you need to monetize that crowd. That remains the key. That is the commonality across a period of time. The good news is that it's not about a box traveling on the back of a truck from a warehouse. It's not about matching demand with supply. It's not about control. It's not about products. I call it Tarzan economics. I say that because we cling to this vine of product that keeps us off the jungle floor. But it's really about the service that music provides, not the product. And the service that music provides is to draw a crowd, is to motivate people, to get them to shake their rear ends or maybe buy another drink in a different kind of world than we're experiencing during this crisis. But that's not that different from drawing a crowd to video, to using Twitch or TikTok or any of the many ways that we can use a video screen to draw a crowd and monetize that crowd. And in fact, some ways far better. You know, if you're on Twitch and you've got a channel and your subscribers have a way for $5 a month to support you, and the people who use these channels are making $500,000 a year to some degree. So I have to say there's something very, very good about that. But fundamentally, this is all about aggregating a crowd, which is what music was involved with anyway. And monetization may be slightly different, but again, monetization is the key. And how we do that really, in some way, resolves this situation. You know, I like to say that the constant in life and business is adversity. You can assume that things like this crisis are going to happen. And the variable that determines your success is how you deal with it. So how you deal with this crisis, it could have been any crisis. It could have been a personal crisis. It could have been a global crisis, a state crisis, whatever. You're still needing to motivate around resolving this adversity that is in so many ways a constant before us. Now, where's the next year taking us, you want to know? And I'll say this, I think it's wherever the insurance companies let us take it. And I introduced the idea of insurance companies because these are not entirely personal decisions made by venues. Oh, we want to open. Yes, you want to open, but can you get insurance coverage? Who will absorb the liability of aggregating a crowd? Who will take on that responsibility fiscally for you? That is a deeper question. Festivals, conferences, all these things need insurance coverage. Insurance coverage will in many ways define it, unless, of course, some of the conservative proposals for wiping out that liability entirely succeed. It may be that Congress will pass and the president will sign a waiver of liability for events and so forth, in which case things will move forward rather quickly once we decide to have them do that. But I'm going to assume for now that that's not going to happen, or that even if it does happen, that it will not survive the test of court, that good tort product liability insurance attorneys will pierce that veil quickly. And so the question will be, who will underwrite us in aggregating a crowd? Who will take on the liability of bringing that crowd together? I think that largely is a question that is in front of us. I think that what's always been true is that mobile people use audio for recreation. They need their eyes for safety. And so they're not watching videos while they drive a car or walk down the street. And if they do, of course, it's a gargantuan mistake and Darwinian in its nature. So we know that mobility means audio. And the corollary of that is that if your butt is in a chair and you are not mobile, then your eyes are used for recreation. And we're in one of those times now where a lot less people are mobile. And I think it's an important time to reflect on how we move forward into video. And that's been going on anyway. So it's a good time to reflect on that. It's a good time to think, how do I deal with a video world, even though I consider myself a musician who is really largely targeting people's ears? And you needed to get here anyway. And so it's a good thing that we've gotten a push towards video. It's a good thing that we're now thinking about how we monetize video, how we present something to those who are stationary, because they're increasing in numbers. Video has been growing in numbers dramatically over a period of time. And this is just more impetus towards that. So important reminder, this is largely about a crowd that is not mobile and is sitting with its butt in a chair. And insurance companies will largely dictate when we get back to a world where we are going to aggregate in one place. Now, I want to be open to the idea that there are questions here. I'm not just going to talk at you as a Max Headroom talking head for 30 minutes. I think that would be ill-advised. So I'm looking forward to some interaction. And if not from the crowd, Storm and Gigi, I'm hoping you have some questions as well.
Well, I do want to remind everyone that you can post those questions in the chat. Jim, if you wouldn't mind, just share with us a little bit of your background in the industry, if you don't mind.
Oh, look, I've got gray hair, you know. I'm an old man. What the hell? And I'm proud of it. Look, I used to represent journalists in their contract negotiations around the world. And there came a point where Hollywood became very interested in how newspapers and magazines and others were using digital technology to move forward very quickly. And I met the Griffin people in Hollywood in, say, 1990, 1991. And they were very curious. Why is it that it takes us a month to get a color separation to do an album cover when USA Today is getting it done overnight? And into that environment, I came as a consultant and then an employee. I became the first technology director for Griffin Records, for David Griffin's operation in Hollywood. And we put in a network, and we fortuitously decided there was pressure on me. When can we release a full-length song? So we put a full-length song online. It was June of 1994 that happened, that we put a full-length song online. And it was Aerosmith's Head First. And that was a seminal moment. Putting up web servers was also something that we were doing at that time. But it seemed more like a long-term play. We put up web servers to talk to our customers and talk to our vendors and talk to each other within the company. It was the programming language that spanned Macintoshes and PCs, which weren't even really running Windows yet and didn't even have speakers on the computers. So this Aerosmith event largely defined my career, because right away, lots of people wanted to talk about how music was coming online. Would we sell music this way? Would this become the path to the future? I think it's pretty obvious it did, in fact, become the path to the future. It forced me to think deeply about monetization. I spent less time with a screwdriver in my back pocket and a network cable, and a lot more time thinking about where all of this was headed. And frankly, it didn't seem that different from acoustic becoming electric in the 1920s. And I say that because before electricity, artists controlled their art with their feet. If you weren't in the room, they couldn't see you or hear you. And so all of a sudden we got loudspeaker systems and we were drawing crowds bigger than we could count in the 1920s. And pretty quickly we were sending audio signals across the ocean. And I thought to myself, well, if we could deal with that, if we could deal with acoustic becoming electric, then surely we could deal with electric becoming digital. And in much the same way, it seemed obvious that we would move towards collective monetization, which is how we dealt with the acceleration in the broadcast industry, was that we did blanket licensing across radio stations, across television stations, and that would be the answer as well. And by the way, I challenge you to find an advance that has occurred since the 1920s that doesn't bring collective monetization with it. Because in fact, that is what we do. We talk about individual control, but what we practice as an industry is collective monetization. As webcasting rose, so did sound exchange. And a law was passed, a statutory license, that let anyone become a webcaster in return for paying a collective fee to sound exchange. The recent Music Modernization Act, what does it have? A statutory license. And so it's the wish, of course, of some that this kind of individual direct licensing was the moving forward paradigm. But it's not, and it never has been. Ever since acoustic became electric, electric becoming digital has followed the same path, which is a path of collective monetization, aggregation, to make it faster, easier, simpler to pay for music, in hopes that when it is faster, easier, and simpler, more people will. And in fact, they do. The best thing that has happened to the music industry from a financial standpoint has clearly been digitization and the move towards the just-in-time arrival of customized digits, not their aggregation into packages. We've really taken them apart from the packages and moved to the just-in-time arrival of customized digits. And what was it that predicted that? It was looking at Asian manufacturing systems. The Kanban always wins. If you ran a car factory in Asia, the Kanban is a signal card that a worker on the line puts up to say, I need more tires, or I need more water pumps, or I need more whatever I'm putting into a car. And they didn't build warehouses for water pumps or tires or engines because they didn't want more warehouses. What they wanted was the just-in-time arrival of customized parts, customized components. And that's exactly what's happened with digits. That's what's happened with music and with media generally, is the just-in-time arrival of customized digits. Whether you're dealing with audio, which is the past 10 to 20 years, or now video or software, we see the just-in-time arrival of customized digits. And that's what we're doing right now.
Jim, can I ask a question about this?
Yes, please do.
Thinking about, trying to explain economics half the time to my family members in the current era has been a challenge, but trying to explain regular non-digital supply chains and how they were so interdependent that this has become for the non-digital good, the fact that we have wrong things in wrong places. So in many ways, we're talking, though, for most of this conference about live music, which is also just-in-time delivery of somebody there to deliver. And is it that the balance to digital is going to be something that's going to be really hard to shift back when we're trying to actually be insurance companies, blessing us hopefully or not, trying to deliver local in a music marketplace that has moved more and more to digital and digital communication?
Well, I've got to decipher that question quickly. But it gives me
it's one of my normal, really cryptic questions, so sorry about that.
It gives me an opportunity to remind people not to cling to the old vine, that they've got to move on, they've got to let go. This is what irritates me so much about the word consumption, that we still use the word consumption, that we still use the word consumer. It enrages me because it pretends that we're still in an old world of balancing supply and demand, shipping boxes places, and let alone that now they're digits. So who cares? It's not supply matching demand. We're not in control of supply. It's not ours to control anymore, not in a digital world. We are not consumers. And why do I say that? Because there's no less once we've listened. When I bought an album as a kid, it was an album that, say, Storm couldn't purchase. They are rivalrous goods. And so in basic economic terms, if you're clinging to the idea that we sell digits at all, let alone control them, you're missing the point. We're not selling music anymore. We sell the crowd that music draws, not music. It's not like we went from packaged music to digital music and we still sell the music. People aren't buying it. We sell the crowd that music draws. And that music provides a service to us in that environment, but it does not behave like a traditional economic good or a product. And we do not consume it. There is no less music available to purchase. Once I've listened to it, I didn't consume it. The word consumer is very deceptive. You think of it in a sentence. The house was consumed by the fire. One less house. But if you really think about the word consumer, where does it come from? It comes from consumption, yes. Consummate, yes. Maybe I shouldn't say the word, but that's what we did to people. We consummated with them. And it's not polite to use the word, but we can't do that anymore. We have to treat them with respect. We have to keep them in a relationship. And that is a whole different world than consummating the relationship with the transfer of $20 over a counter at Christmas time. It's almost a guy's idea of a good Saturday night, is to have your way with them and move on. I wrote an article about this for Business 2.0 a number of years ago. And
a while ago.
Yeah, no, that's true. But the point is that while it wasn't polite, there are still business professors, economics professors, who use the article with their classes to point out that economics are so different now, that it is now so different that it isn't about consummating a relationship with a transaction. It's about sustaining a relationship over a period of time. And I have to confess that when I wrote the article, it wasn't wrong to say, but I said, I think women understand the new era better than men. Because it seemed to me that Amazon was a woman. Because it remembered the color of your eyes, your telephone number, and it sent you a mug at Christmas time. It was almost like guys in their ignorant behavior, not keeping track. And they loved the idea of people coming up to a counter, transferring $20 without so much as finding out their names. We consummated relationships with consumers ad seriatim without so much as finding out who they were. And then in today's world, that just doesn't happen. We know who they are. We can build relationships. Fundamentally different.
I have some students in the room, and they're probably laughing because they know I refer to that dating principle when I teach music marketing, and it comes from you. But we do have one question in the chat box, and we've only got about 4 minutes. But Robert Singerman asks, how do you see just-in-time arrival of customized digital virtual live music in pandemic period and afterwards?
How do I see it? Well, I guess I hear it, but I do also get to see it. This is an opportunity for a moment, though. Robert Singerman is a terrific guy. And I just want to sing his praises for a moment. He is as classy and smart as they get. And if you get a chance to spend time with Robert Singerman, you're really a winner. You're going to get somewhere. Because this is a guy who has been almost, without seeking any aggrandizement at all, attending conferences and offering wisdom and counsel behind the scenes. And he is the kind of person who really greases the skids of commerce in the digital world. And so those who turn to Robert Singerman are way ahead. And so getting a question from him is almost like the kind of softball I wish I could set up. But I did not at all. And I did not know he would be on this Zoom call. But I just have to say, I think that it's a very different world from a product-based world, the just-in-time arrival of customized digits. It really requires relationships. It requires you begin to know who you're dealing with and that you stay in touch with them and that you are constantly reaching out to let them reach to you and you reach to them. And it is not the kind of issue a product and then disappear for 4 or 5 years while you tour around the world and then come back and give people another product. It is the antithesis of that. It requires your ongoing attention. And fortunately, it requires technologists. This is the good news for me, is that it requires a technologist who understands what a database is. It requires that we grab every scrap of humanity that we can to appreciate better our audience. And that's the best answer I can give you in a relatively quick period of time, other than to say, pay attention to Robert Singerman.
Well, thank you. And Robert Singerman's check is in the mail to you any minute now.
No. You know, look, there's thousands of Fosters.
Yes, there is.
On the fall list. And they're all the best at this. And it really is the place you can have an ongoing conversation on these topics. It's free, yes. By the way. I've never made a dime off of it, except I've gotten a lot of bowls of soup.
I will vouch for that. And this is probably a good way to culminate this. I do recommend that you check out the pho list, and we have included in the chat not only Jim's contact information, but the actual spelling of the pho list. We do have a Slack channel set up though, and Jim, if you don't mind heading over there, the link is in the chat room too, and you may have further questions for Jim, but let's give it up and thank him for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
you guys are great. By the way, I just said the same thing about you, Storm and Gigi, as I did about Robert, because you've been doing a great job of training people and helping them move into the new world and keeping a big open mind about it, not continuing to perpetuate these myths that somehow these are products and that the way we wrote the copyright law 40 years ago is what we should still be doing. You know, you've both been on the avant-garde. On the balls of your feet, absolutely anticipating the future and teaching students. And I've been following what you do when I teach my students. So bravo, thank you so much. And thanks for this Amplify music. It's really well done. I'm lucky to be at the end of it all. And I can say, well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Jim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.